To pipe roses using a rose flower nail template, you're going to first use a tip number 12, that's a large round tip, to pipe the base. You want the bottom of the base to basically be as wide as the larger of the two smaller circles on the template. I like to have a nice wide base, that way I know that it will support the weight of the petals when I pipe them on. And I'm using royal icing and wax paper squares, so I'm able to pipe several bases at once, and then I'll switch tips to and use a tip number 104 to pipe the petals. When you're piping the bases, you want to just make sure that you keep your bag straight up and down, and you squeeze to let the icing build up until it's the size you want, and then pull up as you gradually release pressure. Okay, so I want to have my tip 104 with the narrow end slightly higher than the tip of the rose base, so that when I do my wraparound petal, it's a very small opening and I don't see the top of the base poking through it. I'm then going to pipe a row of 3 petals and then a row of 5 petals slightly underneath the row of 3 petals. The nice thing about having these on wax paper is you can make them in advance. So think about having the top of tip 104 almost leaning in a little bit towards the rose base when you pipe that center wraparound, and then when you do the first row of 3 petals you want to have it more kind of straight up and down. And then as you pipe subsequent rows of petals, you want to lower the tip on your base and angle it out a little bit more. When the roses get really big, you may need the help of a spatula to get them safely off the flower nail. Ideally, with that center wraparound, you should have as small of an opening as possible, and you want that first row of 3 petals to be almost even in height with your center wraparound petal, and that way you should have plenty of space to keep adding rows of petals. And it is hard not to mess up some of the earlier piped petals when you start getting to a larger rose. Also notice too, when I start piping the petals, I'm piping them each individually, and it's the turning of the nail that helps to make the shape of the petal. I'm not moving my right hand a whole heck of a lot. There's a slight up and down motion to make the petal, but it's not a huge motion. It's mostly the turning of the flower nail that helps to form the petal. A lot of decorators don't even bother with the flower nail template and the large round tip number 12 to make the base for a rose. They just make the base using the tip 104. You're not going to get as nice symmetrical cone shape when you do that, but by the time you've covered it up with petals, it looks pretty much the same. And it does save that step of making all the bases individually using a completely different tip. And it even works if you're doing it with pink icing.